Meg taking to Instagram December 17th in tribute to the late director and his wife Michelle, who both died December 14th. Rain poured over Montecito like the sky itself was breaking apart when that sleek black car rolled up to the tall iron gates. It wasn't the kind of soft drizzle that washes everything clean. It was the kind that hangs heavy, trapping the air, pressing everything down until the whole world feels tense. For nearly 3 relentless weeks, the headlines wouldn't stop spinning. Screens flashing the same haunting clips over and over. Talk shows dissecting every second like it was breaking news all over again. But behind closed doors, Meg Ryan sat in absolute stillness. No calls, no statements, no carefully worded social posts, just silence. Paparazzi snapped her walking her dog, face hidden behind those huge dark shades. And they thought they had her figured out. They whispered about regret, sadness, guilt, but they had it wrong. Completely wrong. What Mag was carrying wasn't some Hollywood heartbreak. It was something far deeper. Something that had been buried for a decade. 10 long years she'd held on to it. A truth she'd never dared to speak out loud. It all began when the story around Rob Reiner started to fracture. And shockingly, it came from Rob himself, a man she once trusted like family. During one vulnerable moment, he told her something so heavy it clung to her like a scar she couldn't erase. She tried to bury it to move on. But now the moment of truth had finally caught up to her. As the cameras dimmed and the room sank into soft light, Mag sat in that tall velvet chair. No gloss, no Hollywood sparkle left. Back in the late 80s, she was the glowing face of romance. The woman who made the world believe in love and happy endings. But now, Meg Ryan is remembering her late friend and collaborator Rob Reiner. She looked like someone who had seen it all crumble and was still standing in the aftermath, holding on to the last fragments of who she used to be. She held that ceramic mug with both hands, not to drink from it, but to stop the trembling that wouldn't quit. The heat from the cup was the only thing grounding her as she sat there, shoulders tense, heart racing. When she finally lifted her head, her blue eyes cut through the dim light, sharp, tired, and red from too many sleepless nights. No smile this time, no movie star glow, just raw truth. "I need to say this," she breathed, her voice low, rough, stripped of that softness everyone once knew. "If I keep pretending that perfect Hollywood family still exists," she continued, "then I'm part of what happened to him. I'm part of the lie that broke him." Her chest rose sharply as she took a shaky breath. The world thought they knew Rob Reiner. The easy grin, the baseball cap, that big, warm laugh that could fill a room. He was the man behind the feel-good stories, the comforting light in an industry built on illusion. But no one saw what happened when the cameras went dark. No one felt that quiet tension that had been building between Rob and Michelle. A kind of heaviness that lingered in the air, unspoken, but suffocating. Meg's gaze drifted toward the rain running down the studio window. "You have to understand," she whispered. "Rob wasn't just a director to me." When filming ended, he didn't just shake her hand and walk away. He and Michelle had welcomed her in. Dinners, holidays, laughter, the kind of warmth that made her believe that maybe, just maybe, love in Hollywood could actually be real. 4 years, it felt solid, unshakable. But about 5 years ago, something changed. A strange, invisible shift that she couldn't ignore. She remembered it vividly. It's a quiet Tuesday night at their home. Nothing fancy, no cameras, no production chaos, just dinner. Actress posting a black and white photo of the two dancing and smiling, writing, "Oh, how we will miss this man. Thank you, Rob and Michelle, for the way you believe in true love in fairy tales and in laughter." But the second Meg stepped through that door, she felt it. The air was thick, buzzing with tension, like the ghost of an argument that had just ended. Not shouting, not chaos, just cold, controlled silence that made her skin prickle. Something beneath the surface had cracked wide open and everyone was pretending not to notice. Even now, as she spoke, Meg shifted in her seat, the mug landing on the table with a sharp click that sliced through the silence. "Nick was there," she said carefully, her tone tightened. "And I need to be very clear when I say this. I know he's facing serious charges. I know he's their son. But the Nick I saw that night wasn't the same kid I'd known for years." Her voice dropped, trembling slightly. Something was missing in him. Her eyes darkened as she tried to describe it. His eyes were cold, empty, like the light inside him had gone out. A quiet shiver crossed her shoulders. "It scared me," she admitted. They all sat around that table pretending things were normal. Rob tried to keep the energy light, making small jokes, doing his best to diffuse the tension like he always did. "He cracked a little joke about the pasta," Me said softly. "Something harmless, just him trying to smooth things over." But Nick didn't laugh. Instead, his fist came down hard on the table. Plates rattled, glasses tipped, and the room froze. It wasn't just awkward silence. It was fear. The kind that makes everyone hold their breath because they don't know what's coming next. Mag leaned forward, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles turned white. "That moment never left me," she said quietly. Her voice wavered, softer now, almost fragile. "I looked at Michelle. Michelle, always the strong one, the anchor, just sat there, frozen. She didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't even speak. She only flinched. And that tiny movement said everything." Me swallowed hard, eyes fixed on her plate. "I'm sorry, Nick," she whispered, barely audible. Even years later, those words still echoed like a weight she couldn't shake. Me adding, "I have to believe that their story will not end with this impossible tragedy. That some good may come, some awareness raised. I don't know, but my guess is that they would want that to be hopeful and humane, to be something that brings us all to a greater understanding of one another and to some peace." When she finally looked up, her gaze met Rob's, and what she saw in his eyes would never leave her. "It wasn't anger," she said softly. "It wasn't frustration. It was fear. Real fear. The kind that lives deep in the bones, impossible to fake." For just 1 second, he looked at her, trembling, but silent, begging her not to speak, not to break the illusion. And so she didn't. She ate her pasta. She smiled. She kept the conversation moving while her heart pounded like it was trying to break free from her chest. Later, when she stood to leave, Rob walked her out to her car. The night air was cool, heavy with quiet. He hugged her on too tight, too long, and whispered, "He's just going through a rough patch, Meg. We just have to love him through it. Love fixes everything." Me shook her head slowly, her eyes glistening. That was Rob's biggest mistake. She said he believed love could fix anything, that it could shield his family from whatever darkness came for them. But for someone like Nick in that fragile, unstable place, love wasn't a cure. It became a tool, something that could be twisted, used, and turned against the very people trying to help him. This wasn't just one bad night. It was the start of a quiet unraveling. A slow collapse nobody dared to acknowledge. Over the next year, everything changed. Rob's calls, once filled with jokes and excitement, started to fade. At first, it was little things, less laughter, shorter conversations, but soon it turned to long silences and questions that didn't sound like him at all. "Do you have a good security system?" he asked once out of nowhere. Another time he said, "Do you think people can really change?" His voice sounded hollow, distant, like he was talking from another world. The Rob Reiner she knew, the man who lived for film, who could light up a room with his ideas, was fading away. It was like he was slowly being erased by something no one could see. Behind the scenes, Rob and Michelle were making quiet moves, selling properties, rearranging finances, getting things in order, preparing for something. Me said even Aaron Sorson mentioned noticing small changes, but none of them knew how deep it went. Only later did she find out they had been covering Nick's debts. Not little things, serious ones. The kind that make people nervous to even talk about. They kept trying to save him. One more check, one more promise, one more desperate fix. Me and Rob worked together several times throughout their careers, including in 1989 when Rob directed Meg in When Harry Met Sally and later on as co-stars in the 1993 romance Sleepless in Seattle. Rob Reiner was 78. But it was like throwing rope into a storm, hoping someone could still grab it. Then came the day that changed everything. Meg was in a taxi in New York when her phone started buzzing. Non-stop. Not ringing, just constant vibrations. She thought it was a glitch until she saw a message from Billy Crystal. Just 3 words. "They're gone." At first, she didn't understand. Gone where? She opened the link and suddenly the screen was filled with flashing lights, aerial footage, and police tape wrapped around the Reiners' home. Her breath caught in her throat. "I couldn't breathe," she whispered. She wiped her face, staring straight ahead, tears spilling freely. "And this," she said, voice breaking. "This is the part one have to live with." The room stayed utterly still. A producer off camera reached for a tissue, but Mag waved it away. "No," she said quietly. "This needs to stay real." Then she turned her gaze directly to the camera, her tone steady, firm. "The media keeps calling it sudden," she said. "Everyone's talking about stress, about mental health, about pressure, and maybe that's part of it. Sure, but what nobody wants to say out loud is how love can get twisted. Thank you for your faith in the best in people, and for your profound love for our country. How guilt becomes control. How kindness turns into a cage." She leaned closer, eyes burning with truth. "That's what happened," she said, voice steady despite the tears. "That's what broke them. Rob and Michelle weren't free. Not really. They were trapped, not by locks or walls, but by control that quietly took over their lives. Their peace was gone, their independence fading little by little." Me lowered her eyes before continuing. "About 3 months ago," she said, "I tried to visit. I was in LA and something in my gut told me to stop by. When she reached their home, the gate was shut tight. She buzzed the intercom and Michelle's voice came through. But it didn't sound like her. It was flat, cautious, almost rehearsed. 'Meg, we love you, but today isn't a good day,' she said." Me's hand trembled as she heard shouting in the background, then the sound of glass breaking. She paused, voice breaking. "I drove away," she admitted, her frustration pouring through. "I left because I didn't want to embarrass them. I wanted to respect their space," she swallowed hard. "That choice will haunt me forever. I should have done something. I should have called someone. I should have pushed past that gate if that's what it took." Her tone sharpened. "But this polite world teaches us to look away, to mind our own business. And that silence cost everything." The air in the studio grew heavier as she spoke. Then came the moment that still made her hands shake. 2 days before everything happened, she said quietly, "Rob called me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning." Her eyes glistened under the dim light. He sounded calm. Too calm. He said, "Meg, I just wanted to hear your voice. I wanted to remember your laugh." She lowered her gaze. "I asked what was wrong, and he said, 'I think we made a mistake. I think we loved too much and protected too little.'" The room fell dead silent. Then Rob told her something that made her stomach turn. Nick had been demanding the deed to the house. Convinced his father was hiding money, Me took a shaky breath. "Then Rob said something that almost gave me hope," she continued. "I told him no tonight," he said. "For the first time, I told him no." A faint smile crossed her face mixed with tears. "I told him, 'Good for you, Rob. You have to draw a line.' I was proud of him. I thought maybe he was finally taking his power back." Her voice cracked, "But I didn't know. I didn't know that drawing that line would cost him everything." Her hands clenched tightly, emotions swelling. "People keep talking about explanations, about stress, about excuses," she said firmly. "Let me be clear. The Nick I saw knew exactly what he was doing." Her words landed hard. He knew how to manipulate emotions. If he cried, Michelle softened. If he hinted that he might hurt himself, Rob reached for the checkbook. He turned their love into control. Me's voice went cold, sharp. "That's not confusion. That's calculation." She began to pace the rug as rain slammed the studio windows, each drop sounding like a heartbeat. And when love finally stopped giving him what he wanted, she said, voice trembling with fury, "When the forgiveness and the money ran out, he broke the very people who built their lives around him." She stopped, eyes glistening. "Rob Reiner gave the world hope," she said softly. "He made people believe love could conquer anything." Her voice softened even more. But the pain underneath stayed raw. The cruel truth is that same love, endless, forgiving, unconditional, became the thing that destroyed their peace. "It wasn't a lack of love," she whispered. "That's how their story ended. Not because there wasn't enough love, but because there was too much of it, A love that couldn't draw a boundary. A love so bright it blinded them from the danger right in front of them. Me turned toward the camera. No smile, no Hollywood armor left. Her voice trembled, but every word hit hard. "I'm speaking now because I want justice," she said with quiet strength. "Not just the kind decided in a courtroom, though I pray Nick never walks free again, but justice for their legacy." Her tone sharpened again, firm but emotional. "I don't want Rob remembered as some tragic headline. I want him remembered as a man who fought, a man who gave everything he had to save his son, even when it destroyed him in the process." She leaned forward, her stare unwavering. "We have to learn from this," she said. "We have to stop celebrating the parents who give until there's nothing left. If you're scared in your own home," she said slowly, "if your own child is hurting you, love is not enough. You have to choose survival." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Rob and Michelle didn't choose survival," she whispered, shaking her head. "And now the world feels colder without them." For a moment, the woman who once embodied Hollywood romance looked completely broken. "I miss him," she whispered. "I miss my friend. I miss knowing he was out there making people laugh, bringing light wherever he went." Tears filled her eyes. "And I will never forgive myself for driving away from that gate." She paused, voice shaking. "Never." Then she looked up again, her tone turning steady. "But I promise this. I will spend the rest of my life making sure people know what really happened because they weren't just taken away." She said, her voice icy now. "They were betrayed." The grief in her voice deepened as she spoke. "This kind of pain doesn't fade. It stays inside you, heavy and real." The studio was silent. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, slow, steady, like the world itself was listening. The cameras kept rolling as Me sat back down, eyes fixed on the cold mug before her. The coffee was untouched, the steam long gone. The truth hung in the air, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Meg had finally broken her silence, and the echo of that truth was louder than anything she could have said before. The story of the Reiner family, once Hollywood's golden example of love and success, was now shattered wide open. Behind those beautiful gates, the image had crumbled, exposing how dangerously thin the line can be between unconditional love and complete self-destruction. There was no polished ending, no comforting fade out, no happy goodbye. The footage closed on Meg's tear-streaked face. That haunting silence saying more than words ever could. And as the world watched, one chilling thought settled in everyone's mind. Sometimes danger isn't hiding in the dark. Sometimes it's sitting right across the dinner table, smiling, while everyone else stays quiet. Too polite, too scared, and too loyal to speak. The aftermath hit instantly. The world didn't just react to what Mag revealed. It reacted to how she said it. The illusion of the Reiner family, Hollywood's picture-perfect couple, shattered overnight. 4 years, they were the standard of how to do it right. But with every word Meg spoke, that image fell apart piece by piece until only the raw truth remained. Within hours, social media exploded, newsrooms scrambled, and the story transformed from a tragic loss into something far darker. A story about control, silence, and betrayal. And Meg didn't stop there. In the days that followed, she began releasing more of what she had kept hidden for years. Old notes, journal entries, private letters, texts, and emails exchanged between her and Michelle. Each one peeled back another layer of what was really going on behind that perfect image. The quiet collapse of a family living under the weight of fame. One of the first shocks came from a statement Meg gave directly to Vanity Fair. Determined not to let rumors twist her words, she described a weekend in the Hamptons 3 years earlier, celebrating Rob's birthday. Ocean calm, candles glowing, everything beautiful on the surface. But beneath that calm was something darker. "The tension never left the air," she wrote. "You could feel it like static." That one quote reignited everything. What looked like an innocent birthday gathering suddenly became another missing piece of the Reiner family puzzle. It made people realize those cracks in their image didn't appear overnight. They had been spreading quietly for years, long before anyone on the outside noticed. Me remembered that night vividly, the sunset spilling gold and pink across the water. Rob standing near the shore, shoulders heavy. He looked smaller somehow, older, like the waves were slowly pulling the strength out of him. Then he turned to her, eyes filled with exhaustion, and asked softly, "Meg, do you think I failed him?" Her heart sank. He wasn't talking about Hollywood or success or legacy. He was talking about Nick. Rob confided that Nick had accused him of caring more about movies than about family. That line broke him, and it broke Meg to hear it. That was Nick's favorite move, she explained. Guilt. He knew exactly where to hit. Rob had always wanted to be the good guy, the one who made everyone happy, who never let anyone down. And Nick used that against him. He made Rob feel like his achievements were something to be ashamed of, as if every moment of success meant another debt to be repaid in apologies and forgiveness in money. Then Meg spoke about Michelle, her voice softening with grief. Michelle was brilliant, she said. Creative, full of light, but slowly she started fading. Michelle had been an artist known for her breathtaking landscapes, dreamlike scenes that made you feel at peace just by looking at them. But the last time he visited her studio, every single canvas was blank. "I can't focus anymore," Michelle had told her. "I'm always waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the next crisis, the next emergency, the next demand." That sentence stayed with me. They lived in constant tension, she said. You could see it in their faces, even in how they stood, always bracing, always preparing for the next explosion. Mi's tone hardened, frustration mixing with sorrow. "And let's be honest," she said, "everyone saw it. Their friends, their colleagues, the people at dinners and parties, even people on set. You could feel it. Something was wrong, but nobody wanted to step in." She looked down. "We told ourselves it wasn't our place. We called it privacy, but it wasn't. It was avoidance." Her words didn't just expose what happened inside that house. They exposed the silence surrounding it. "We all knew," she whispered. "We just didn't want to admit it." Her next public appearance came on a podcast. And by then, her tone had changed. Stronger, sharper, filled with determination. "The producers, the friends, the people who showed up every holiday," she said fiercely. "We all saw it." Nick's temper, his tone, the way he spoke to Rob and Michelle. This wasn't stress. This wasn't youth. This was control. But Rob, ever the protector, shut down any attempt to intervene. "You don't understand addiction," he'd say. But Mi said it plainly. This wasn't just addiction. This was a takeover. Quiet but complete. Her voice cracked briefly before she steadied herself. "And we respected Rob's wishes," she said. "So, we stayed quiet." The silence that followed was thick. No one wanted to push too hard. No one wanted to hurt his pride. And while everyone stayed polite, the situation just kept getting worse. The podcast host didn't interrupt. They just let her speak. Then Mi revealed one more moment she'd buried deep for years. "There was one night," she said softly. "Just me and Nick in the kitchen. Everyone else was outside. He was calm. Too calm. That was the scary part," Mi said. "He could be charming, just like Rob," she swallowed hard. "He looked at me and said, 'You know, Meg, my parents live in a fantasy world. They think everything has a happy ending, but real life isn't a movie.' At the time, she brushed it off as teenage cynicism. A kid trying to sound deep, but looking back now, she said it with chilling clarity. It wasn't sarcasm. It was a warning. He was telling me what he was planning to do. That he was going to break that illusion." The room went quiet after she said it. The realization was haunting. The signs had been there all along, hidden behind charm and denial. Now, with the January 7th trial date approaching, Meg's words weren't just echoing across podcasts. They were shaking headlines, courtrooms, and Hollywood itself. When a reporter asked if she was afraid, her answer was ice-cold and final. "He took the people I loved," she said. "There's nothing left he can take from me." That line sent a chill through everyone who heard it. It wasn't anger, it was resolve. In the weeks that followed, Meg announced something new. A foundation in Rob and Michelle Reiner's name dedicated to helping older parents facing manipulation or abuse from their adult children. "It's a silent epidemic," she said, and Rob became the face of it without ever realizing. The mission was clear, and for the first time in a long time, Meg sounded grounded. Not as a celebrity chasing headlines, but as someone who had lived through loss and come out the other side, determined to make sure no one else suffered in silence again. Then came Mi's most haunting reveal, one that left even reporters speechless. "I went to the house yesterday," she said softly. "The tape is gone, but the place feels empty." Her words lingered like a chill in the air. "That home used to be alive," she continued. "Music playing, the smell of garlic and tomatoes. Laughter echoing through the halls." Her eyes filled as she spoke. "Now it's just quiet." She walked into Rob's study where his glasses still sat untouched on the desk. The script he'd been working on was still open. Page 42. It felt frozen in time, like he had just stepped out and never came back. Mi's voice softened. "I sat down in his chair," she whispered, "and I made him a promise." She promised that the story wouldn't end with what happened behind those closed doors, that it wouldn't fade into silence or get twisted by gossip. "It will end with truth," she said. "The raw, uncomfortable truth, and the kind he was too gentle to say out loud." That promise became the heartbeat of everything that followed. Meg's decision to speak wasn't about shock or spectacle. It stripped away the glossy headlines and forced the world to face what really mattered. The slow, quiet collapse of a family from the inside. This wasn't just another Hollywood tragedy. It was deeply human. It made people look inward at their own families, their own silences, the secrets they pretend not to see. Meg's confession turned Rob and Michelle Reiner's story into a mirror, showing how love, loyalty, and silence can sometimes destroy the very people they're meant to protect. By the end, it wasn't about celebrity anymore. It was about the damage that hides behind charm, wealth, and perfectly curated smiles. And the woman who once embodied romance, Meg Ryan, the eternal girl next door, had changed before everyone's eyes. In the weeks following her foundation's announcement, the story refused to fade. Morning shows, late-night hosts, and magazine covers all wanted her. But Meg wasn't chasing attention. She was chasing purpose. She appeared calm, composed, yet the grief still flickered behind her steady gaze. "This isn't about Hollywood anymore," she told one host. "It's about how silence protects the wrong people." Donations poured in. Messages and letters flooded her inbox. Older parents from across the country sharing their pain. Stories of manipulation, emotional control, and fear disguised as love. Meg read every single one. "Every story feels familiar," she said. "Like I'm reading echoes of what Rob and Michelle lived through." The foundation, now officially called the Reiner Project, grew fast. It wasn't just a charity. It was a movement. Meg joined forces with lawyers, psychologists, and advocates to push for stronger protections for parents facing emotional and financial abuse from their adult children. "We need to call this what it is," she said boldly at a press conference. "Not family drama, not private business." Her voice didn't shake. "Abuse is abuse." The room erupted in applause, but behind her strength, the pain was visible. Every appearance seemed to drain her, like she was holding her heart together by sheer will. Reporters noticed she still wore Rob's silver bracelet, a quiet reminder of everything she'd lost. Then on the eve of the trial, Meg released a handwritten note online. No PR spin, no staged rollout, just truth. "Tomorrow isn't about revenge," she wrote. "It's about accountability." Rob and Michelle believed in redemption. "I believe in truth, and truth is how we honor them." Within hours, her message went viral. Old film clips resurfaced. Fans shared memories. Lines from Rob's movies. For a moment, it felt like the whole industry had paused, united in reflection. The question on everyone's mind, would Meg testify? Some said her words could change everything. Others said she'd already done enough. But one thing was certain. Mi's voice had already transformed how the world saw this story. The night before the trial, a photographer captured her walking alone along a Malibu beach. Wind in her hair, eyes locked on the horizon. No team, no entourage, no performance, just a woman carrying a promise she refused to break. Later, when someone asked what she was thinking in that moment, her answer was quiet but powerful. "I was thinking that love should never cost someone their peace," she said. "And if Rob were still here, he'd tell me to keep fighting." What began behind those closed Brentwood gates had grown into something much larger, an awakening. Meg Ryan had turned her pain into testimony, her silence into warning, her loss into purpose. She wasn't just telling a story anymore. She was exposing a pattern that too many recognize but too few ever name. The morning of the trial came beneath a heavy gray sky. The kind that feels like it's holding its breath. Outside the courthouse, tension buzzed through the air. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing like lightning. When Mia arrived in a sleek black suit, hair tied back, her expression unreadable. The noise around her faded to a hush. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just walked forward, steady and silent. Inside, the courtroom was already packed. Whispers rippled as she took her seat. Even the judge seemed to sense this wasn't just another high-profile case. When her name was called, Mia stood tall and walked to the stand with quiet control. She took the oath. Her voice didn't waver. "I knew Rob Reiner for over 30 years, she began. "I loved him like family." The room fell completely still. "He wasn't just a filmmaker," she said softly. "He was the most compassionate man I've ever known." She paused, then added, "But compassion can become dangerous when it blinds you." Mia spoke clearly about the calls, the warnings, the moments she tried to step in, and the moments she stayed silent. "We all saw it," she said firmly. "We all knew something was wrong, and we all did nothing, including me." That confession hit like thunder. Even the defense team shifted uncomfortably. "Nick wasn't lost," she continued. "He was in control. Guilt was his tool. Pity was his leverage. He knew exactly what worked." The courtroom air tightened as her words sank in. "He used love like a game," Meg said, "and he knew he could win." Then her tone softened. "Rob once told me, if I just love him harder, maybe I can save him." She lowered her gaze. But love doesn't save everyone. Sometimes it hides the truth. When she finished, there was no applause, no whisper, just silence. It was silence so heavy it felt sacred. Even the judge hesitated before speaking. What Meg had given wasn't just testimony. It was truth, raw, unfiltered, and necessary. As she stepped down from the stand, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Whatever pain or guilt she'd carried for years had finally been set down. Outside, chaos erupted. Cameras, questions, shouting voices. But Meg didn't slow. She got into the black car and disappeared behind the tinted glass. That night, her words echoed across every screen. People called her brave, honest, fearless. But Meg stayed silent. Those close to her said she went home, fed her dog, and sat by the window for hours just watching the rain fall. Because no matter how powerful the truth is, it doesn't undo what's already been done. It doesn't erase grief. It only keeps the darkness from being buried again. And that's where this story ends. Not with comfort or closure, but with clarity. Mia Ryan didn't just reopen an old Hollywood wound. She forced the world to see what hides behind fame, loyalty, and silence. Her courage turned heartbreak into a warning and loss into purpose. A line was drawn. A truth was spoken. And the silence that once protected everything, it was shattered for good. If you felt this story hit deep, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment with your thoughts below.